Welcome, Edmund and Richard. Great to have you here.
Edmund, Richard.
That's okay. I was going to say, Richard, I was going to give you an introduction, but a man who needs no introduction. We've seen you there for the last 40 minutes and 50 years in the business.
Scary.
It is, but a magnificent thing that you're here and with this film showing you're still out, you're still there, touring, connecting with people, writing and performing great music.
Well, I hope so. People who have just watched that film might disagree with that description, but I think there's life in the old dog yet.
Still here, Richard.
Still here, yes.
50 years and 6 months now since you
Who's
started.
counting?
Research. Edmund, wonderful to have you here as well. And I see on the credits that lighting director, and I mean, you guys have worked together for a while, haven't you, Edmund? So tell us about how this film came about.
Oh, I guess I've been lighting director for the band for about 10 years. I've always worked in media and television. I went to school for cinema arts, but I kind of shelved it for a long time and got into live production and theater and dance. And I guess I got a hair a couple of years ago to make a documentary film. So I approached Richard and I said, hey, we're touring. Do you mind if I just document the whole thing? Not like I think the Talking Heads documentaries are a little worn out. So he said, yeah, as long as you stay out of the way. So I did my best, and
That actually meant off the bus, actually.
oh,
I like the way you cut out all the sex and all the drugs. That was very good.
yeah, the
roll.
constant line of women. And, I do want to say one thing, that the bass player, the alternate bass player, his name is Davey Farragher, not Danny like it says in the credits. And I got a nudge in the ribs when that came up, and I couldn't believe that I missed that. I guess I was missing the old Danny Thompson days. But, yeah.
I think the film gives a really good perspective because for you, Edmund, you work backstage, so you're preparing lighting, and it's a really good insight as well into preparations, and there's some lovely work there as you're doing rehearsals, Richard, and giving us an insight into the whole thing around touring. I mean, Richard, you're very prolific in touring. I think in 2015 looked up some stats that 70 plus gigs, and of course that was across the world. So not just this particular tour, but coming over here, coming to various festivals, Europe, I think Japan, I think you went to Canada, as well as performing in the US.
Yeah.
Incredible thing to do so much live work as well. And you alluded to the fact that you hoped that people would be able to make a connection and that they would enjoy the experience. It looks as though that continues to happen, Richard.
Well, I think it does. It might even happen better. I might have, after 50 years, I might be finally cracking this live thing. Some of the singing's crap. I really apologise for some of the singing. Sometimes on stage you really can't hear yourself, whatever you do. So you're kind of screaming into the monitor. So there's a lot of very, very sharp singing in this. I apologise. Edwin, I should have done a better job. Should have had me tuned.
That's Simon. It's all Simon.
But I think as I'm able to reach into myself more, that translates better to the audience. And I just did a solo tour of the UK, which I think I was doing really a good job of doing that, of actually finding the space inside myself, and I think audiences really can pick up on that universality that we find inside ourselves.
Interesting to give us an insight into what it's like on tour and some of the ups and downs. Also some of the locations that you go to as well, and from your respective viewpoints. I mean, Edmund, some of the visuals that we see, not only on the road, but of specific theatres and specific places. Shooting this material and then editing it into this movie, what were you trying to get at visually during the course of the film?
To tell you the truth, I just because I was working, I was doing a job, and I have other duties besides lighting, because we all kind of, except for the band, we all have kind of second hats. Here are two hats. And so I was just trying to shoot as I could, and things that inspired me, like especially the architectural details of some of these theaters, and some of the older, for the States, older theaters, 70, 80 years old or whatever, but it's just things that really inspired me and really stick out, and also just because backstage, it's not. I mean, sometimes we have green rooms that are really gross. They're not. We're not put up in these nice. And so I just wanted to kind of show off a little bit of that, and also the tedium. I think the Banana Boat song was one of my favorite moments, and that was all Reverend Maiorino. I just said, hey man, here's some images. I put together a couple minutes, and I gave him, I don't know, an hour worth of sounds, and I said, just give me something that says tedium, and he really nailed it. I thought, so.
I think there's a sense of that during the film as well. I mean, there's a sense of
Tedium.
your humour. There's a sense. No, not. Well, it's quite interesting because a lot of the visual work as well is showing that you're on the road and it's repetitive. And there's a couple of scenes there that you've edited in a way to show us, in a way, how repetitive some stages of touring are. But there's also the guys in the band, the way that you're talking, Richard, as well, about trying to make each gig a unique experience. And I guess for you and the guys on that tour as well, that's important as well, to try and do your best and to try and keep yourself going through that tour.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to try very hard because we're such a nice chemistry on stage that things happen. We don't have to contrive. We don't have to say, my goodness, we better be really creative. I mean, things just happen, and we do play off each other. And perhaps, yes, a tour is tedious. A 6-week tour of the States is tedious in one way, and it's kind of grinding. The distances you drive sometimes are big. I mean, sometimes you drive 600 miles, without a day off. You sleep on the bus, you drive overnight. But it's also kind of thrilling. Your tour bus is home. It's a wonderful, comfortable place. You have your bunk. You have your special seat on the bus that no one else is allowed to sit in. Not quite that bad. You've got everything with you. You've got your luggage with you. You don't have to deal with airports every day. That's a terrible way to tour, really. It's flying. Flying maybe 2 flights a day. You're going in and out of Chicago every day. What fly to Chicago, fly somewhere else, fly back to Chicago, fly somewhere else. That's the way to kind of kill yourself, I think. So touring on tour bus it is the best way to tour. If you're rich and famous, then you have a tour bus each. You have like 5 tour buses or something. And 6 are Arctics, and plus the limos all waiting backstage for you to take you to town if you want to go into town. There's levels of touring, but I really like the fact that the band and crew are all on the same bus, and we kind of arrive, at the same time, or we get dropped to the hotel, then the crew goes onto the gig early, then we come down a little bit later. But there's a great camaraderie to it, and. But people don't last on the tour. They don't last in the band or in the crew. If you can't get along with them, they can be the greatest musicians in the world, but you have to be able to get on. You have to be able to deal with the lifestyle. We don't really have anybody in the band that's druggy, or anybody who really drinks that much. I think after about the age of 25, you're not going to survive in the music business if that's your lifestyle. I mean, you can't keep going. If you want to keep going, if you want to be a musician for life, you have to really serve the music. You have to serve the music, and you have to find a way to make the music live in other people. And that means, for the most part, having a comparatively clean lifestyle and keeping fit, keeping healthy, going to the gym, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's it can be arduous, and you have to be ready for it.
We have a tremendous group of people. We really do, and we spend days off together, and it's just very, very nice. And everybody has done this for so long that it's just we all like being other places, and we get to a new city, and Michael's off with his 50 friends in every city. I don't know how. And it's nice, you get to be somewhere different every day and be with the people that you love, and it's great. Yeah.
I like the perspective and some of the thoughts you give about connecting with the audience as well, because I interview a lot of musicians who are up and coming, again some people who've been in the industry for a while. And sometimes it's getting past PRs, because PRs control everything and access to not just interviewees but actual fans getting there. And that's one thing it looks from the film that through touring in the way that you do, Richard, that you've got that direct access to fans, to the people that are buying your music, that love your music, that, as you say, some people come to one gig, sometimes if they're able to travel and might come to a number of gigs, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's a wonderful thing when you do connect with people. When people do say, you know, your music means so much to me, you think, shit, you know, that's amazing. Sorry, I mean shit. I mean, wow, that's amazing.
Holy cow!
Holy cow! And sometimes, but people say things that I just can't deal with. You know, people say, you know, your music is the most important thing in my life, and I think, you know, sorry, too much, forget it. You know, can't be. And you know, there's always a little wall between yourself and the audience. There's a little distance. So, you know, we're not, you know, saying to the audience, okay, we'll be over at the pub. You know, we're over at the Crown at 10 o'clock. You know, come over and join us. It's not quite that social. And sometimes you get people who hang on a little bit too much to the band, and you have to have a distance away from that. But I like to think that we are accessible as human beings, because we are human beings.
Richard lights up, man. Like I remember in Nashville, somebody brought a 1952 Vincent.
Oh right.
Like you spent an hour with that dude, you know, talking to him.
I spent an hour with his bike.
Oh yeah.
You have to be there as well.
Yeah, but have the right toys, yeah.
Yeah.
But you light up when the audience comes around.
Yeah.
Interesting about songwriting as well, because again, I've watched interviews, I've listened to a lot of your music over the years, Richard, and it's a combination of stuff like some of the tracks we hear there that are about emotions and about experiences, but also these road characters and different characters as well, and it's quite a mix. So people are getting very different things. I'm getting very different things when I listen to your albums, because of the diversity of songwriting, of lyric writing that you do as well, which is very intelligent. So it's having that mix, and also just this great catalogue, this great variety of music. The fact that you're able to do acoustic music, folk, blues, all of these influences that come into your repertoire over the years, Richard.
I think as a songwriter, sometimes I write from personal experience, sometimes I write about my own life, consciously or unconsciously. Sometimes I really like to adopt a kind of a writing persona where I'm somebody else. And because popular song or even folk song is a comparatively brief medium, you have to kind of cut to the chase a lot of the time, and so singing a song in the first person about someone who isn't you is kind of a shortcut. It's a bit like you know, like a handheld camera or something. It's like a point of view camera, you know, walking around. So there's something very immediate about that, and you don't have to have you know, a verse, a preamble explaining who this character is. The character starts speaking, and you get who the character is from what they're saying in the song. And it's amazing what you can put across in that way in a 3-verse song. But sometimes you sort of have to. If you want to have another layer to your music, I think you sort of have to do that. Yet you have to be using shortcuts in that way.
And of course, having performed many styles of music, done traditional folk music, again maybe the influence, because again you've been living in the US for the last 3 decades as well, influence of American music. I know that some of your early influences came from blues and came from kind of the rock areas. I don't know. I don't think of myself as influenced by American music at this point. I think what I did with Fairport, you know, back in the 60s, and what I've continued to do has always been a kind of a hybrid between
rock music, which is the sort of the zeitgeist, and you know, rock, not rock and roll, as I was trying to explain in the film. And so there's always been elements of rock music in it, and there's always been elements of British music in it, British traditional music more than anything else, and bits of jazz and bits of classical that sneak in, you know. So it's always a kind of a mixture, but it's you know, I don't find myself really thinking, oh gosh, you know, I live in Los Angeles, I must pay more attention to Jan and Dean as an influence, you know, or the Beach Boys, you know, I must cop more Brian Wilson in my music. You know, these days you're so connected to whatever you want to be connected to. So if you want to be connected to, you know, a British traditional singer like Fred Jordan, then you just go to your computer and you go Fred Jordan, and there's Fred Jordan singing in a field in Shropshire. I mean, it's, you know, it's whatever you want to be influenced by these days. So I tend to lean much more on British roots, I think, these days.
Do you think that has an impact on the audience as well? Because, as you say, you're keeping that basis of folk tradition and the English tradition as well. Do you think that resonates with your audiences, say in the US? Do you think they find that a bit unique, or do they find something special about that?
I really don't know. I'm sort of baffled about why Americans would like me at any level. I don't really know. I think maybe it's just because the roots are common. So if you know country music, then you can kind of relate to a more British take on those kind of melodies, those kind of stories. Because it's, you know, country music is all Scots-Irish anyway, and you know, I suppose you know the blues is such the you know the lingua franca, you know, of you know, it's gone all around the world. So you know, bits of that overlap with Celtic music. So if I sing a Celtic pentatonic tune, then people think, oh well, we understand that. You know, there's a lot of commonality in British music versus American music. But I don't really get it. I don't really know. But Americans, they're like Billy Bragg as well, who sings in a really broad sort of Cockney accent. So perhaps being different is good. I mean, you know, Americans liked Bob Marley. You know, so perhaps that they can appreciate something that they can relate because it's in the same language approximately, and that there's some melodic interaction somewhere. I don't know. Baffled. I'm still baffled.
Edmund,
Yeah.
I'll just ask you one quick question, and I will put it out to the audience if you've got some good questions for Edmund and Richard.
Richmond's fine.
Yeah, oh dear.
They named that city after you.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Edmund, as far as trying to get across in those 43 minutes the kind of spirit of Richard's music, of getting on tour, I mean, overall, how are you trying to mix those different things, touring on the road, those different places? I mean, in the finished film, I mean, what are you trying to hopefully get across in the 40 minutes so? Because it's a relatively short film, but there's an awful lot of things to get through, being on the road, different styles of music that Richard plays, just all the things that are happening in that tour. So trying to fit that into 40 minutes, how did you go about trying to edit and trying to get that all in?
Editing was a nightmare. It really was. This is like, it must be the 5th incarnation of the film. It was originally way over an hour, but I think the style that it had never really changed format. So I think any longer you start to lose people a little bit. I might have lost people now. I don't know, but there was I was really honestly just trying to make what I have fit in a way that communicated. At times I felt like maybe it was like a little bit of a Whitman sampler of Richard, but I think that's okay until the very end. It was really just trial and error, months and months of trial and error. And in that time, Pete passed away, which is why there's a flash of Pete up there, you know, Pete Zorn.
Yeah, because you worked with Pete for a number of years, didn't you?
Really
Richard?
did. We were four Pete's with Pete for a long time. I stopped working with Pete for economic reasons. I just cut it to a trio as a temporary measure, and by the time I was thinking, well, we need Pete back in the band, he'd moved on. So it's very, very sad, very poignant for us. So we're very close to Pete.
Okay, let's put it out to the audience. I will try and see where you are. If anybody's got a question about the film they'd like to ask Edmund or Richard. We've got a couple of people over there. Is there a microphone? Is there somebody with a microphone approaching? Yes, there is.
Water enough the mic.
Is this on? Yeah. Hi there, Dave Carden. Edmund, I know in the film you hung around that particular theatre, the derelict one, for quite a while. What was going on there? Why focus on that? Surely it wasn't a live venue for you, so why dwell on that?
It was the lyrics of the song that motivated that, and I felt like I needed something to support, and also I needed a segue into Detroit and the juxtaposition of that was all the World Financial Center in New York, like the high rises, and then Detroit. And I really wanted that juxtaposition for that song, Never Give It Up, and I just felt like I needed a visual aid to get into that world, to get into more of a suggestive world, and I had access to that theater, and it was done obviously after the tour, because it's not somewhere where we played.
So that was in Detroit, then?
The theater was in Northampton, Mass.
Northampton, Mass.
Yeah, and but the houses and the street scene, that was all Detroit. I think from the Ann Arbor gig, jumped over there, and so that was the way that went. So I just felt like I needed something to slip us a little deeper into a suggestion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I believe there's somebody in the next row up.
This is for Richard. Richard, you tour under two entities, acoustically and electric, and you through the film you talk about connections with the audience. Is there two different types of connections through those entities, or do you ever crave one over the other? Well, halfway through a tour, for example.
My favourite kind of tour, which we've been doing a bit the last couple of years, is where I open for myself. Where I go out and do half an hour acoustic and then bring the band out after the interval. I love to do that, and it's not always economically possible, but that's the most fun. I think it is different. I think with the band it's more of a rock and roll experience. You're more asserting yourself over the audience almost. You're kind of dominating the audience. With an acoustic show, you're really trying to do the opposite. You're trying to pull the audience into you. And I think an acoustic show sometimes it's a bit like church or something. It's creating this stillness and trying to move people in a certain way, usually through the stories. Whereas with the electric band, I think you're trying to move people in a much more physical way. It's more about the bass drum, like hitting you in the chest as part of the experience, and the whole appeal of something that's kind of louder and much more visceral, much more in your face. So I really do see it as two different things, and you could certainly achieve both in the same concert in the same evening. And maybe that's the best way to do it. I don't know.
Thanks.
Any more questions in the audience? Yes.
Sorry, this is not really, I apologise, this is not really a question specifically about the film, but question to you, Richard. You sound like you have an amazing work ethic. Has that always been the case, or is that something that's developed later in your career? Because you mentioned actually in the film one stage that when you're at home you like to work office hours, sort of 9 to 5, writing songs.
I think it's good. I think if you're a creative person, sitting around waiting for the bolt of lightning, you can wait a long time. You might wait for years. for that. So I like to kind of meet the lightning halfway or something. So I always think of it as like priming a canvas or something. If you're an artist and you're not quite sure what the next picture is, then you say, okay, I'll prime a few canvases, and you start priming them, with white, and as you're doing it, you start to get ideas. So it's just something to get you into the process. And I think through working regularly, if I have a couple of weeks off, if I have a month off, that's fantastic. Where I can go in every day, and I can pick up where I left off, instead of having to start cold. It's a lot easier. I always think that it's just like a rusty tap. Once you've got the tap open, then the water will start flowing. But it's an effort to get it there. It's an effort to get your mind into the right state, the right almost submissive kind of semi-conscious state to be creative. And I find it, if I discipline myself to start, I'll start 7 a.m. and I'll work till lunchtime, and then I'll say, well, that's it, unless I'm really getting interested in something. In which case I'll continue all day. Maybe I'll go all night as well. But in some cases, otherwise I'll say, well, nothing's happening. I'll come back to it tomorrow. If I hit a brick wall with a song, I'll say, okay, I'm done with that one for now. I'm going to switch to another song. I really like to have lots of songs going at once. And I like to have unfinished songs to go back after a layoff. I can say, okay, I'm going to pick up this one that I didn't quite finish. This one needs a bridge. This one needs verse 3. Just as somewhere to get me into the process. Once I'm in the process, then it's fine. Then stuff starts to flow. And there's also that thing where sometimes you think, I've got this really important song and I have to get this song written. This is like the most important song I've ever written. And you spend months, maybe even years, just trying to write this song and rewriting it. Meanwhile, in the margin, you're writing other songs. You think, I'll write this idea now, quick. Okay, whoops. Okay, it's fine. I'll come back to that later. Meanwhile, this very important song must get written, and you realise that you've actually written like an album in the margins. So it's just that thing of getting your mind in the right place, getting your mind and spirit tuned and in the receptive state. That was an incredibly long-winded answer to your very, very nice question. Thank you.
Yes. Or
just to ask Richard, you're talking about songwriting. When you write a song like Bees Wing or Vincent Black Lightning, it's like a complete story. Do you have that in your mind before you start writing, or does it sort of develop onto a conclusion as you're writing it?
I don't think I have the whole story. I rarely have the whole story. I just start writing almost for fun, just to see where it will go. So I might have an idea. With the Vincent song, I started with the bike, and I was thinking, American music. You've got such these are sort of romantic mythological objects, like a Cadillac. You just take that. You write a song about a Cadillac. Half the title is there already. I mean, Cadillac something, Cadillac something, and you've written like a country song already. It's there. It's built in because the mythology. So much mythology of popular music has come from. Never met any bricks until later, so Sandy would tell me these stories about Annie's lifestyle, which she envied because Annie seemed to be this sort of free spirit, and Sandy was sort of chained to her career and the city and everything, and she kind of longed for Annie's lifestyle in a funny sort of way. So Bees Wing's got half Annie Briggs stories via Sandy and stories from this old tramp called Ted, and it also sort of got mixed up in the middle and became something else. Anyway, it kind of became a piece of fiction. And I'm always happy again when it ends in a certain way, when you can kind of tie the knot at the end of the song. Oh, that was long-winded as well. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Two truly archetypal songs.
This is for Richard. What tips would you give to a budding guitarist?
That's a good question. Someone asked me that a couple of days ago, so I have it fresh in my mind. Originality. Technique, yes. Spirit, emotion, yes. But in a world where there's a million guitar players, in fact there's more than a million guitar players, I think they sell 3 million acoustic guitars in America a year. That's just acoustic guitars, 3 million a year. So that means there's a lot of people playing. And what's so special about you? What's going to be so special about you that people should listen to you over and above all those other guitar players? So obviously you have to have a love for the instrument, and obviously you have your heroes that you listen to and you try and emulate and copy. But at some point you have to do something different. You have to be different. So your influences have to be different and your intentions have to be different. So perhaps you don't listen to Eric Clapton, perhaps you don't listen to Yngwie Malmsteen, perhaps you listen to Hank Garland instead, or you listen to Eddie Lang instead, or you don't listen to guitar players. You listen to African harp players, or you listen to classical trombonists or something. You have different influences. And I think it's also very important to put something of where you come from into the music. Wherever you're from, if you're from Sweden, or if you're from Australia, or you're from Tanganyika, you have to put something of you, where you come from, the culture you come from, into the music. So if you're going to be a British blues musician, then you can't just ape. You have to put something of you into that style. So originality.
Okay, I think we've got a gentleman down here at the front.
A question for Edmund. The film's got quite a washed out feel to it, quite a pale palette, and then fades to black and white at the end. Was there a particular thought in that overall look and feel of the film?
I don't know. I work in color, so I just wanted to. It opens in black and white too, and then closes in black and white, and that's because I carried a Bolex with us on the road and shot. No, there was no thought. It was just personal taste. Yeah, it wasn't a just kind of like film school concept behind it or anything. Yeah, I want to add.
Yeah, you're not saying that I'm washed out.
No. Oh, sorry. Can I add to the previous question? Is that and it's true, putting yourself into what you're doing, but what does that mean exactly? Like, so I think stepping away from whatever your chosen practice might be, and exposing yourself to as much. Like, it was a great point about a classical trombone player, which is really great music, and so the more you do that, the more you expose yourself to other mediums and other art forms and what other people are doing in general, and I think the broader base it gives you, you'll be able to find exactly what you want to do and where you want to work and how you want to, if you pay attention, you can find your voice within that whole kind of melange of activities that are going on in the world, and then bring that back into your practice. Like, don't just do your practice. Like, really broaden yourself to the world. Yeah, and then you'll be doing things like pale footage.
Have we got any more questions? Yes, we've got a gentleman in the third row.
This is a question for Richard. I was just wondering if you had considered, or you could be persuaded to make a duets album with your great friend Loudon Wainwright, Or failing that, your son Teddy?
Sounds good to me. Either of those would be great. An album, yeah, absolutely.
You did a tour together, right? Loud and Rich?
Yeah, I've toured with Loudon, and I've toured with Teddy as well. So, yeah, I think those are possibilities, absolutely. That's the kind of things that record companies and agents love. Is sort of duets. If you're a country artist, you spend half your life doing duets albums, usually with the opposite sex. That's very important. Well, thank you. Yes, I'll certainly consider those. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll write those down.
One of the questions there, Richard, was about guitars, and again this year, still releasing material. We've had 2 albums, acoustic classics and acoustic rarities, so going back to the acoustic guitar. How do you feel now, 50 years on in the industry, and particularly looking back at some of the groups you've been in, again pioneering folk rock, again this phase now of doing a lot of touring, getting across the world, and again working with other great musicians. Saw a duet you did with Bonnie Raitt, talking about duets there.
Bless her, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, where do you feel you've got in terms of songwriting, and do you feel you've actually achieved what you set out to do as a singer-songwriter? Just on a general level, I'd say.
Well, I feel I'm in a process, and I'm not at the end of the process. I think the process just goes on until, you're sick of it and you want to do something else. That's always a possibility. Or it still fascinates you, and you want to see what happens next. You want to see what's around the next bend of the river, So it's just an ongoing thing. I mean, I suppose in some ways, I'm glad I've written some of the songs I have. I've written some crap as well, of course. But haven't we all? Cole Porter wrote crap too, so that gives me a bit of a little frisson of delight to know that there are other sufferers out there. And I probably think that I should be doing more organised things. There's a musical play I'm working on right now, which is more where you kind of string, 16 songs together, and they work in a much more, linear narrative way. So I think I should be doing things like that. I did a war requiem last year, First World War requiem, and I really enjoyed doing that. That was great fun. So sometimes I think I should be doing things a bit more like that, rather than here's a song, there's a song, here's an album, there's an album. But I'm glad to just keep doing everything. I like my job. I'd rather do it than have somebody else do it.
Eamon, you've got several jobs really, including filmmaker here. How did you feel about this experience? I mean, is this the first kind of feature of this kind that you've done in terms of music documentary? And again, 25 documentaries in this festival, for example. I think Commonwealth has had something like 90 initially to go through, and the way that genre has just exploded in the last year or two. Is this something you'd like to continue to look at, to work in terms of music documentary, or do you feel this could be a kind of one-off project, and a particularly unique project in chronicling Richard's tour here and his career?
Personally, it's kind of a one-off, I think. I really enjoy dance film quite a bit. I'm immensely honored that Colin that you guys chose me for this. I mean, it's amazing, really, because it was my first kind of feature length. That being said, I love shooting concerts. I realized like it's really fun, and having been in LD for 20 plus years, like it's just I know kind of where to point the camera at the right time, and I could see doing that more and more. And there's a lot of I can see why some of the great directors that have chosen to just do music have done it because it's a gas, you know. But I completely. I'm tomorrow going up to Scotland to work on something else that's completely different, like not even related to music. We're looking at, we're working on the nuclear disarmament issue, which is 180, and not even, it's a whole different beast, you know. So it's what's moving me, what's drawing me. I feel like that issue needs to be talked about, and this was more like I'm here and I want to do this. Let's do it. You know.
Brilliant. And Richard, how do you feel there's a last word on this film now as a record of this tour, but also the reflection, some of the intelligent reflections that you've given on songwriting, on your career, and what it's like to tour? So what do you feel about this film?
It's always embarrassing to be the subject of a film, so I'll pretend it's not about me. I'll pretend it's about Michael Jerome, and I'm just in it, talking occasionally. I think it's a great film. This is the first time I've really watched it all the way through, because I find it too embarrassing, for the most part, to sit at home and look at myself. So when I was at home and I had it on my computer, I kind of fast forward through my bits and just look at bits of everybody else. I think it's rather beautiful, and I think it captures a lot of the feeling of being on tour of America. So I congratulate Edmund. Well done, old chap.
Thank you.
Well done.
And I'm going to say thanks very much to both of you, Edmund for bringing the film here, Richard for being part of that film and allowing us into that tour and into your thoughts and into your life as a great musician, great singer-songwriter. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.